my kitchen. Good to see you. Today we're going to make some simple sauerkraut. I had a colleague ask me if I would make her some sauerkraut and she would pay for it, and I thought, wow, that's flattering. So Rebecca, this is for you. I'm making you a batch of my simple green sauerkraut. You're going to need a head of cabbage, and preferably one with some big outer leaves, because you need the leaves to help keep the sauerkraut under the brine. I'll show you how that works in just a minute. But right now I'm going to break these leaves off, reserve those for later, and start working on this. You'll also need kosher salt, and hopefully you won't need any water because the cabbage will create its own brine. So let's get cutting up this cabbage and making some sauerkraut. Whenever possible, I buy an organic cabbage. They tend to ferment faster and they don't have any pesticides. So if you can, make sure you have an organic cabbage. I'm going to use a sharp knife to cut down the middle and cut out the core, and then I'll begin slicing into small thin strips. It's usually wise to have a compost or garbage bowl off to the side so you can just throw it in there and not worry about it. Cut that half into quarters. Cut the core out of the other one. Cut that into quarters. I'm cutting it as thinly as I possibly can, as you can see. I'm going to continue cutting up this cabbage and I'll be back to you when it's all done. And that's the last of it going in. We've got a whole lot of cabbage here. And believe it or not, most if not all of this will fit in one quart-sized jar. I'm going to take a tablespoon of salt and sprinkle it all over the sauerkraut. And I'm going to mix it up to evenly distribute it. And I'm going to let that rest to start letting out some of its water from the leaves. One of the things I can do is take a heavy plate and put it on top, and it will help force that water out of the cabbage leaves. So here's my heavy plate. I'm going to put it on top, press it down. You can also put some weight on it if you prefer. Usually I find for the first 20 minutes of brining like this, I don't need to add any weight to it. So we'll be back in 20 minutes, and I will add more salt if necessary and start squeezing the water out of that cabbage. Well, we're back. That was 20 minutes, and now I'm going to take the plate off. I'm going to check out my cabbage. It's starting to get pretty wet, so that's a good sign. Yep. So I'm going to work it a little bit with my hands, and then I think I'll add 1 more tablespoon of salt. Usually for me to tell the way it is salty enough is by tasting it in its raw state. If it tastes good salty in its raw state, it'll taste good and salty in its fermented state. Let's see if we can get some water to come out. Yep, we're good. So, I'm going to put just a little bit more salt on there. So that'll equal 2 tablespoons of salt. And then I'm going to let it rest for another 10 minutes. And then I'll squeeze it until it has created its own brine. Okay, I'm back, and here, now what I'm going to do is just start squeezing and squeezing and squeezing. But first, what I'd like to do is get a pair of gloves, because sometimes the salt irritates and dries my skin. So I'll be back in just a minute after I get my gloves. Here we go. All right. Look at that. Perfect. I'm going to just work this for a while. until I can get all that brine to come out. All right, I'll come back when it's all done. I've got a really good amount of brine coming out. See all that? That's just from one handful. And I could keep going and going and going. So what I'm gonna do, whoa! Ran down my sleeve. Okay, now what I'm gonna do is go change my shirt, and then I'm going to pound it into my quart jar for Rebecca. Okay, change my shirt. So, once again, whoa, it's like a rain shower, except for it's salty and tastes like cabbage. So, Troy's grandma gave me this old potato ricer, you know, and soup thingy. You go like this, right? And things come out the sides. So, I used to rice potatoes with it. But the other thing you can do is pound sauerkraut. So it's a perfect sauerkraut pounder. If you had a set, use this to help you pound that sauerkraut into that jar. Hopefully that's not too dark. So let's go ahead and start pounding this into the jar. I think we're going to get a 2% brine out of this. I'm pretty sure of it. What did I do? Oh, there it is. Oh, yeah. Oh, this is going to be good. Okay, let's see if we can get the rest of this in there. And the juice. There we go. Alright, so I'm going to use a cabbage leaf, and I have a sour stone, a glass weight that helps hold the cabbage under the brine. So let me pound that first. Not much pounding to do. So I'm going to take one of the cabbage leaves and fold it up. Get it down in there. Like that, and then another one, maybe a smaller one. I'll take out the rib. Get all of the cabbage under the brine. If any of it floats up, just get rid of it. So these are my sour stones. They come 4 in a pack, and they work really well. They go right on top, and you press it down. Look at all that brine. Whew. There you go. I'm going to put an airlock on this and set it aside for 3 weeks. Now, if you don't have an airlock, go ahead and use a regular mason jar lid. You will need to burp it every day, though. Otherwise, your ferment may explode. So you're going to twist it and you let it go psst, and then put it quickly right back on, because you don't want any oxygen to get to the sauerkraut. Okay, well there you have it. We'll be back to check on this weekly, but definitely in 3 weeks. I'll make sure to do a tasting with you. Thank you for coming back to my channel. If you enjoyed what you saw today, please like and subscribe. It was so nice cooking with you. See you later. Bye!